Hey, where's that old fart? You're calling me an old fart? Well, at least I don't look like a Blangonga. Oh, really? You don't look like a Blangonga? Oh, okay, you're right. I'm sorry. Me too. We can both keep our turf.
Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, one of my favorite parts of modern Monster Hunter are the turf wars, a new mechanic added in the 5th generation games where monsters would play out an actual scripted fight, and at the very beginning these were mostly pretty tame, but through to Iceborne and then Rise and Sunbreak and now Monster Hunter Wilds, we have quite a number of extremely cool turf wars. Some of them are also quite rare or just not very well known, and so today I wanted to talk about my personal top 10 turf wars of all time as of this moment, some of which I think are unique enough interactions or rare enough monster combos that you may not have even ever seen them before. In the background footage until now, you've been watching some turf wars or turf war-like interactions that don't quite make my list, but these are essentially my honorable mentions of ones that I really like that just didn't quite make the cut. Like Devil Joe picking up Fanged Wyverns isn't really a turf war in the traditional sense, but it's just such a funny interaction and I love it. Or Arkveld's turf war that he has where just like the majority of the Wilds roster that can have this with him, where they just get knocked down and he uses his chain blades to suck the energy out of them for a very big pop of damage. And this is cool, but it's used so repetitively that it lost a lot of specialness for me. Or hey, there's the Odogaron and Palumu turf war from Monster Hunter World, which was capable of glitching out and having Palumu fly a mile into the air before Odogaron just straight up instant transmissions into the sky to pull him down, and I think that this is just so ridiculously silly. That said, let's get into the list properly with number 10, Nerscylla versus Gypsaros, but with Gypsaros having his head broken twice. The standard version of this turf war is a short exchange of webs and dodging, then Nerscylla wraps up Gypsaros, Gypsaros flashes her and escapes in the confusion. If the turf war happens after you've fully broken Gypsaros' flash organ, which sounds like a euphemism, then he cannot flash, of course, and he instead just sort of stays webbed, and then Nerscylla turns around and does a little happy dance like, yay, a new jacket! And then after a moment, Gypsaros just sadly slips out and walks away. It's just such a cool lore interaction that we finally get to see in action in Wilds. Of course, Nerscylla is wearing the skin of a Gypsaros, but this shows us her actually being capable of getting it for herself. But the extra layer of it being a little bit more unique if you break Gypsaros' head first as well ahead of time just takes the cake really. Next up in 9th place, another Wilds turf war, Lagiacrus versus Rathalos, and specifically the version of this turf war where Lagiacrus wins, as either one of these monsters can win this turf war, but it has different animations depending on which one wins. When Lagiacrus wins, when he wraps up the Rathalos and coils around him, he will pop out like a ball of lightning, which basically just knocks the Rathalos out cold for a brief moment. You can see its head just slumped down at the end of its neck like it's gone totally limp, and then Lagiacrus just tosses him aside like nothing. And I mostly just love this for the brutality of the way that Rathalos looks after being shocked like that. It's the most dead while alive a monster has pretty much ever looked, except for Gypsaros. Honestly, more than Gypsaros playing dead. Moving on to the 8th place then, we've got one from Iceborne, which is Rajang versus Wyverns that can fly. And that doesn't necessarily mean flying wyverns specifically, because it can also apply to bird wyverns and stuff too. It's a wide selection. And while this can happen with a number of monsters, it's just so cool that I never get tired of it. First, the monster has to be flying in front of him, then Rajang just straight up grabs the monster by the tail mid-air, swings them around, uses his brute strength to pull a flying monster down to the ground to slam them into it repeatedly, and clearly winning the turf war is Rajang, and he does it with just pure brute strength, and it's just so cool, it's amazing, it's fantastic, I love this turf war to bits. 7th place then is one from base Monster Hunter World, which is Legiana versus Paolumu. This is one of the early turf wars that I actually really love, because it takes advantage of what these monsters are and what they're meant to be. Paolumu is essentially an inflatable flying monster. He uses self-inflation as a balancing tool. Legiana has extremely sharp claws and is a much more agile flyer, so it flies up and around Paolumu going on top of it, trying to come from a surprising angle, which works. From here, Legiana grabs at Palumu's inflatable sack until she manages to grab hold of it with her claws and sort of stretch it out and completely mess up the balance of it. Then just dangling him by the sort of organ here as she spins him around and around before just discarding him like a piece of rubbish to the ground, doing one final bit of damage. It's just such a brutal showing of why the apex monster of the region is the apex monster of the region, and it uses the sort of ecology built around both monsters and their fighting styles to interact in a very reasonable way. In 6th place, I've got another Wilds turf war, Seregios versus Ray Dow. Seregios just sort of outmaneuvers Ray Dow using his agility. He avoids lightning shot and then fires some scales out to get him to bleed, dodges through another lightning shot, and then reaches down and claws at Ray Dow. But Ray Dow powers through it and slams Seregios down to the ground using his wing, before then blasting Steve point blank with a full power railgun attack. It's just such a cool example of how both of these monsters function, what their strengths and weaknesses are. They're both flying wyverns, but they're vastly different styles of flying wyverns, and being able to show how different their fighting styles are is just a great way to be able to see it in game. This turf war shows the main differences between two otherwise comparable creatures, and I just love turf wars where they actually feel like they're properly battling with each other too. Things like dodging attacks or parrying or powering through an attack just to deal damage yourself, that type of stuff where it feels like they're engaged in proper combat, and you'll see a bit more of that type of thing as we go through here too. Next up then, not quite one where that's even footing, is Zuwu versus Guardian Ebony Odogaron, which is another new turf war from Wilds, and I just love how absolutely visceral this one is. This is two extremely quick and agile monsters, both extremely powerful monsters, but Zuwu is designed to eat Guardians right down to his goddamn genetic cephalopod code. He slips around Odogaron's attack, then full mouth flips and lands on top of him, teeth down, trying to like swallow Odogaron whole essentially. Then Guardian Ebony Odogaron fires a dragon blast to break himself free momentarily. He then gets tripped up and stabbed to hell from Zuwu while he writhes in pain on the ground. Then Zuwu picks Odogaron up above his head and slams it down to the ground to end the turf war. This one is much less of a fair fight, but I love how it perfectly illustrates the dynamic between these two monsters. A very literal predator and prey relationship, and it's sort of terrifying to watch Zuwu does what he does best. On to the fourth place then. For this I have the Rajang and Savage Devil Joe Turf War from Iceborne, and it's worth noting this is the same animation if it happens with Runener Gigante instead of Rajang, but it just looks way more correct to me when it happens with Rajang. They have a physical battle to start with. Joe grabs him by the neck, brings him up into the air, but Rajang breaks free while he's up there. He opens up Devil Joe's jaw, like he straight up rips it open with his arms and then punches him right in the mouth, forcing them both to tumble down to the ground. It is an iconic pair of monsters having a perfect back and forth, showing their own strengths. The big brute with a massive maw on one side and the raw strength muscle monkey on the other. Third place today, let's talk about Malzeno versus Scorned Magnamalo, a Sunbreak turf war. Sunbreak and Rise had some incredibly cool turf wars, and this is at the top of the barrel among them in my opinion. Magna goes for a pounce, which Malzeno dodges out of the way of, flipping forward over Magnamalo's back. They both go for an attack at the same time and bounce off of each other, basically a parry between them. They both take to the air a little bit and then both go for a tail attack. Malzeno tries to grab Scorned Magnamalo, but Magna basically blocks it with his own tail, so another parry type motion. Malzeno then coils around Magnamalo and bites at him before getting pushed off. Then they end up in a proper beam struggle, the beams exploding in the middle. Both of them take a big pop of damage, which ends the turf war in an extremely badass tie. Up to second place then, a base Rise turf war that I have loved since the first time I saw it, Bishaten versus Almudron. It is just simultaneously so cool, silly, and a perfect expression of the more unique aspects of each monster. Almudron starts by going on the attack, but Bishaten, being a full-on acrobatic masterpiece of a monster, just flips over them in a way that almost feels like he's taunting Almudron. He lands on top of Almudron's head, then pulls out a fruit from his little fur pocket and starts hitting Almudron in the head with the fruit, which is just the silliest coup de grace attempt that I've ever seen in my life, and I love it so much. But then Almudron grabs him with his tail and essentially pulls him into the ground as he burrows in himself, trapping Bishaten in a makeshift pitfall trap made of mud. And then, just as Bishaten manages to escape out of the hole, Almudron jumps out from the ground and nabs him out of the air just to throw him down to the ground, ending the turf war perfectly in such a beautiful way. Then finally, my first place entry is one that I bet a lot of people have never even seen because of the rare combination of monsters required, which is Primordial Malzeno and Velkhana. This is like a sword fight right out of an action movie, and it makes Primordial Malzeno feel like the actual representation of a knight. Malzeno opens up with a stab and gets parried by Velkhana's tail in a very quick animation. A lot of these animations are quick, you'll have to watch carefully to actually catch them. Velkhana follows up by firing an ice beam at Malzeno. He blocks it with his wing like it's a shield, pushes forward using it for cover, and then bashes Velkhana with his wing. They both try to get a tail strike in, but essentially parry each other. Then Velkhana goes for another beam, but Primordial Malzeno goes to the air and blocks the beam with his wing again. This time he flies forward while blocking the beam like a stalwart block from Lance and Wild, this time doing a full-on air juggle combo when he reaches her, knocking her face aside with the wing again, then uppercutting her into the air, and then a front flip tail slam to smack her down to the ground. And it's worth mentioning that this is like an overwhelming victory victory for Primordial Malzeno. Velkhana doesn't do a single point of damage to him through the whole animation. It both just shows the strengths of both monsters, while also managing to show just how next level Primordial Malzeno is, even compared to an otherwise very powerful Elder Dragon as well. And that just about does it for today then, everyone. I should also mention that I tried to somewhat balance it between monsters. Like, I didn't want to have like 4 Rajang Turf Wars or something like that. But aside from that, just a reminder that these are just my own personal opinions. I love Turf Wars, you love Turf Wars, and today I just wanted to shout out my own personal 10 favorite ones we've had so far. Like if you liked the video, subscribe with the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage.